everybody, how's it going? Christian from Treasure Town here, and today I'm super excited to announce that I'm going to be doing a full presentation on the evolution of the US quarter. The quarter is the largest denomination coin that we use on a regular basis, and it's existed for a long time, all the way back to the 1790s. And what we're going to be doing is tracing the evolution. There's been tons of different designs, so all the way from the beginning to the present day, and along the way talk about the errors, varieties, and specific bits of information that are unique to each of the coins. Obviously, I'll have pictures of them. It's going to be a presentation and I talk over it. So let's get into it. Again, we'll be starting all the way at the back. Now, like dimes, the quarters weren't minted until 1796, which is a little bit later than some of the other designs, and that was when they had a draped bust style as opposed to something like a flowing hair that was on the larger denominations. So our first coin here is just the draped bust, except it's a small eagle on the back. That's going to be the main thing that changes in the beginning. It had 15 stars on the obverse for the states that had ratified the Constitution, and it had some really prominent denticles, so these little things kind of intruding from the border, and there was no indication of value or denomination. It would have just been by the size alone. About 6,000 were minted, with around 10% of those surviving today, so about 600 exist today, and some were made with proof-like surfaces. They used to be considered proof coins, and now it's a little bit more ambiguous as to whether they're proof or not, and what their official designation is. But these coins, interestingly, had sharper strikes than some of the designs that would follow on these quarters. In terms of the values, the very circulated corresponds with like a good 4, lightly circulated XF40, uncirculated mint state 65. So it's about 10,000 for a worn example here, 40,000 for XF40, and 300,000 for a pristine example. The next style that they would use, they'd keep the front pretty much the same, but they went to a heraldic eagle on the back, which is modeled after the Great Seal of the United States, and they reduced the star count to 13 for the original ones, and it took a little while to get there, as these were made from 1804 to 1807, so nothing from 1797 to 1803. These coins are pretty easily located in grades ranging up to very fine, and 1804 is super rare. There's a mintage of similar to the 1796, about 6,000, while all the other ones are pretty common with a few 100,000 made. And unlike the draped bust small eagle of 1796, a lot of them will have lightly struck areas. In terms of varieties or errors, 1806 over 5 is the main overdate to look out for. And these coins, their prices drop if it's not the 1804. 300 really circulated, 3,500 for XF40, and 100,000 for uncirculated coin. Another bit of a hiatus before they get to the cap bust large size, 1815 to 1828. They had switched over to the cap bust on some of the other denominations by then, and it's pretty similar. It reflects that on this coin. There's a lot of scarce dates, with 1823 over 2 overdate and 1827 coins being the major rarities, and they're tougher to come by compared to the half dollars. There's more overdates than the one I talked about. One case has a triple, so it's 1825 over 4 over 2. And there's even one 1822 coin with a 25 over 50 cents version. That's pretty neat. And not all of these dates had coins minted with them on it, so it wasn't like every year from 1815 to 1828 had coins made then. They would slightly reduce the size of the quarters. They also had restyled the features like the letters, stars, and numerals, and if you just look, definitely a slightly more modern looking coin, as well as taking away the E pluribus unum on the reverse. 1835 is a super common date, and that's about $75 for circulated, $250 for light circulation, and $15,000 for a BU coin, but it has a more cameo-like appearance than its predecessor and is another cool coin. Then we get to the seated Liberty coins, and I do want to say one thing. So there's 6 different types of them, and they are pretty small in terms of the different changes, so I don't have prices for all of them. But the very first one was the no drapery type 1, and it matched the other new silver designs of the time with Liberty seated on a rock. And the reverse was pretty similar if you look back, except now they have core doll instead of 25 cents, and it was made for 3 years from 1838 to 1840 with values of about $40 for the really circulated, $400 for light circulation, and $30K for great copy. Then we go to what we just call the no motto, and they've added drapery right under her elbow. I'll just go back to show you none there. Then here we get some significant drapery, and that's pretty much the only difference. The rarest coin here is the 1849-0, which doesn't even appear in mint reports but still exists. And then the lowest mintage for these outside of that one is the 1864S, which is just a really hard coin to get. These ones slightly cheaper, $30, and $100 for a slightly better coin, $1,500 for a really nice looking coin. So not as expensive as before. So the scarce varieties are the 1842-0 small date, the 1853 recut date, and the 1856S over small s. And 1866 actually has an error no motto coin that's probably considered a pattern, but they end up putting a motto on these coins, as you'll see in about 2 or 3 designs. And that's the problem with that coin, or the thing that makes it better, I guess. They then, in 1853, had a much more complex design that rose up when they dropped the weight of the quarter, and to do that, they put the arrows to signify that that change was happening. That was about a 7% reduction in size, and they wanted people to stop hoarding newly released coins. The rays were only used for 1 year, though. On the back, there was a overdate 1853/4. Kind of weird how they had to do it going forward, but they did. And they're slightly more expensive, but nothing too crazy price-wise. I didn't want to just get repetitive with the pricing. They then removed those rays because the dyes struggled to produce them. They would just wear out quicker with them. And there's a cool variety here, 1854 Huge O, which had just super thick walls. The mint marks are going to be right under the eagle, but just really thick walls of the O. Generally, the O mint mark at that year was really, really thin. Now we get to the with motto coin, and as you can see, it's just the motto is "In God We Trust" above that eagle, and there's nothing too crazy outside of that, really. It continues through to 1891, except for some more arrows coins that we'll talk about a little bit later, but the 1873 CC no arrows only has about 4 or 5 specimens existing and is super, super rare, the most expensive one of these coins. 1891-0 was the only New Orleans issue of this type, and the quarters, again, are tougher than dimes or halves to get from 1879 to 1889, as the mintage was really low, primarily because they were shifting focus to making silver dollars, but for whatever reason, quarters were even rarer. They then slightly increased the weight of these coins in 1873 and 1874 to make it exactly 6.25 grams. It was less than 0.5%, and the slight increase was temporarily noted again by these arrows to the side of the date. They're scarcer than the earlier arrows type, 6% of the mintage on these arrows coins compared to a much larger mintage of coins when they first did them. And these are not super expensive, though, prohibitive in any sense. $25 really circulated, $200 very lightly circulated, and $4,000 for uncirculated ones. They then, in a overall effort to just change the look of the coinage, shifted to the Barber Quarter from 1892 to 1916, and had the same as the dime and the half dollar, with Liberty in a Phrygian cap, and the Great Seal and Eagle on the reverse, just a little bit retooled. Interestingly, these coins are very difficult to come by in better shape than really worn. In other words, the prices rise really quickly as most circulated heavy, so it's like $5 for a circulated one, maybe even, it's definitely a little bit less. $80 though for a lightly circulated, and $600 for uncirculated. So fairly expensive there. And the San Francisco Mint produced the rarities, with 1896S, 1901S, and 1913S being the really tough to find ones with very high prices. And then proofs were made in all years, generally minting between $500 and $900 per year. After that, we get to the Standing Liberty design, which is, in my opinion, one of my favorite quarter designs out there. And the first one is called the No Stars, and it had a really low mintage in 1916 of 52,000. So any 1916 coin is really expensive today, and the No Stars in general are pretty pricey. Here, very circulated. This is for 1917 though. Is $25, light circulation $100, and uncirculated $600. And the initial design, as you can see, has a bare-breasted Liberty, which was redesigned quickly, and they also had more stars on the side of instead of under the eagle. That's why it's No Stars. Once they shift that, though, you see the stars a bit more spread out. One thing I do want to make note of is that the mint mark is down here, if there is going to be one, to the left of the pedestal. And there's differences. So at first they made 1917 to 1924 with a pedestal date. It was raised up here, and then they were struggling and made it a recessed date, 1925 to 1930. There were reports that the coins were wearing away really easily because of the placement of the date on the pedestal. And the designation of a full head, and also people look for a full like shield design, but really it's full head is the designation, and that's a marker of a strong strike, as not all of them were struck that well. These coins are pretty much worth spot in very circulated condition. Lightly circulated is a $30 coin, and uncirculated is a $300 coin. There's also 1918 over 7 as a really rare coin, as well as 1927S for just one that's more expensive and more accessible. It's a lot easier to find the recessed date coins than the pedestal for whatever reason. They then made the Washington Quarter that you're probably pretty familiar with today to observe the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. John Flanagan won a competition for design, and it became a commonplace American coin. It was minted in 90% silver from 1932 to 1964. They didn't make them in 33 though, and then they transitioned over to clad in 1965. The rare dates to look for, by far 1932D and 1932S, and you're going to find the mint mark right underneath the eagle on any silver coin, so 1964 and back, just to confirm. Proofs were made from 1936 to 1942, and then 1950 to 1964 on the silver coins, and then resumed after the special mint set. Proofs were made in 1968 and on. The clad coins are really easy to come by. They're just worth face value, but there are expensive errors across all the years, silver and clad, to look for. 1975 and 76 had the bicentennial coins that looked like the right with the drummer boy, and there were a few of those with 40% silver made, but almost all of them are not. In terms of the values, for anything that's not uncirculated, which is a pretty inexpensive coin on most dates, about $20-25, it's just going to be spot value. Then in 1999, one of the greatest innovations in coin production ever was really made, in my opinion, or in modern coin production, and that was the 50 states program, and they also did territories in 2009, but they would have specific states commemorated each year with a picture of the state's name and its date of founding, and it was a super popular series that sparked a lot of interest in coin collecting. It's one of the first ways that I actually got into it, and over 100 million other collectors were likely involved, so just tons of people got involved and kind of were aware that it was out there. There are tons of errors and varieties, some with significant value, other just cool to see the error, and I have a video on it, but there's deviations on Wisconsin, Washington, D.C., Minnesota, Arizona, and tons more. And then 2009, they did Washington, D.C., as well as 5 territories, which are Guam, American Samoa, Virgin Islands, Northern Mariana Islands, and Puerto Rico. They then kind of continued this theme, and in my opinion, not as great of a design, but they did the America the Beautiful quarters. So from each one of those places, they would then take something to like a national park or some sort of significant outside thing and put them on the coins. I think the coolest thing that they did though is recently in 2019, they started making W mint quarters, which are pretty rare, and they would release about 2 million of them into circulation in the regular rolls. Those coins sell for close to $10 each, and they also use these America the Beautiful designs for 5-ounce silver rounds, which are somewhat popular. And then the errors aren't as well known and definitely not as expensive on these coins, and they're not as popular. They didn't kind of live up to the hype surrounding the state quarters. But nonetheless, that's where we're at. I'm looking forward to see what gets unveiled going forward. I have some ideas myself, and I'll look forward to seeing you on some of my other videos. $50 are going to come out in a little while as well.
Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you want to get in touch with me, do so on my website, treasuretownYT.com, my Instagram, treasuretownYT, or my Facebook, Treasuretown. I've got links in the description, and I'll see you on some of my other videos.